Nice to see you. I feel like it's been a really long time since I've seen all of you.
I feel like I also really jinxed myself. I kept saying I was going to get violently sick. And we were at California Adventures and I started just like dripping sweat. I couldn't eat anything. And I was like, why am I getting sick right now? I was like, I think because I said I was going to get sick, right? I don't know what happened. I got really, really sick. And I don't know, part of it, I rode like the big roller coaster a bunch of times with my daughter as I wasn't feeling well. And I felt like it just launched me, like every pun intended, like launched me into sickness. I don't know what happened. I had to go to the emergency room on Tuesday. I couldn't breathe. They did like a check on my heart and my lungs and everything was fine. So I'm still a little short of breath, but like I'm much better. I literally spent the whole week last week like on steroids. I couldn't breathe. I don't know what happened. I like really, really did legitimately get sick. But I also had a good time here. I took a picture with my churros. I didn't eat all 4 of them at once. I mean, I did eat at least 4 over 2 days, but not at one time. But I did take a picture with my churros. It was a lot of fun. It just, yeah. So we did California Adventure the first day and then Disney the second day. And apparently it was like the busiest the park has been the whole year. One of the cast members told us. They were awful. I waited 2.5 hours for Radiator Springs Racers. And then we got to the front and it broke down. And they were like, get out of line. I was like, but it's right there. My kids lost it. Like one of them cried. Like, because it was so long. It was so busy. Yeah, it was like that it was just like that the whole day. But it was still fun. I mean, I ate my way through both parks. I did respectably for those 2 days. And then I just went downhill from there. Yeah.
So Radiator Spring.
Yeah.
And I sat there till about 2 a.m. waiting in line to Radiator Spring.
Yeah.
Never got it. It
Oh.
broke down like twice. It started up again,
Yeah.
broke down again. We were right at the end.
Yeah.
And then they like started calling us back to the buses to go.
That's so frustrating.
So I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, that ride, it has such a long line. It was really cool. We finally got on it eventually. We just paid the $20 a person to like walk up onto it, which is just ridiculous. On top of what you pay to get in, right? But it's a pretty cool ride. It just took forever to get to. But so I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. I cursed myself. So I won't say that next time. If that ever happens again, I'll just say, I'm just planning to go to Disneyland. I'll leave the sickness out of it in case I accidentally did jinx myself. But a couple of things really quickly. I gave you a homework assignment. In case you aren't sure what I'm talking about, I don't want to punish you for that. So I'm going to collect that on Wednesday. So make sure that you, sometime between now and Wednesday, if you haven't finished it, I didn't know that, right? You still have a couple of days to do so. So I sent out an announcement on Canvas last week. Hopefully all of you are getting my announcements, right? If you're not, make sure you set those notifications so that you didn't come here and go like, what's going on? Right. But I did send out, so we're supposed to watch the movie He's Just Not That Into You and fill out the worksheet that goes with it. It connects really, really well to chapters 3 and 7, and then 8 and 9 that I gave you to read over and watch that video on your own. So if you haven't done all those things, make sure that they're done and you bring that sheet with you on Wednesday. We'll talk about it a little bit and then I'll collect it. Okay, so still have a little bit of time if you didn't wrap that up. And if you did it, thank you. That's fantastic. Just hold on to it until Wednesday. I graded all of your homework assignments for the most part. Really fun. A lot of you went condom shopping, right? Which I thought was great fun. A lot of condom shopping trips and then like my sexuality reflections. So most of you got full points. A couple of you gave me not quite enough. I had like 1-page paper. If it was really brief, then you lost some points. A couple of you who did art projects, I don't know if any of you are here who did that. Make sure you give them to me so I can see them, right? So okay, good. Okay, I look forward to that. You had no way of giving it to me last week. So I graded those. If you never turned it in and you have regret, you can still turn it in for half credit at any point the rest of the semester. Okay, so I stopped deducting after 50%. So if you didn't get that to me, you can still do it and earn some points. You'll do one more of those later in the semester where you pick a different option. So a lot of people picked like the one where you didn't have to go anywhere. I hope you pick something uncomfortable next time. So that sounds mean, but I hope you push yourself a little bit is what I mean. Other than that, here I have all these notes to myself, things to catch up on. We're going to start chapters 3 and 7 today. I assigned you 8 and 9. Those are really light chapters in a sense, right? And I covered them in that little video I gave you, plus the slides. Versus these ones, there's a lot of content that we'll cover 3 and 7. And then I want to give you a heads up, and this is awful timing. We're hiring a new psych faculty, and they're making all the interviews throughout the next month. They're spreading them out during our classes. I don't know why. I have no say over that. So there might be a couple of days where we have where I give you virtual assignments or like a virtual lecture and class. So just really make sure you're checking. As soon as I know the dates, I'll let you know. But they're coming up. It'll be in the next couple of weeks. So on the plus side, we'll have a new psych person. On the downside, it will definitely interrupt at least 1 or 2 days of our class if everything goes as planned. A couple of us are fighting that, but we don't have a lot to say. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted. I think that is everything that I had to write down to share with you. Are there any questions, anything related to any of that before we actually jump back into this? Halloween's really soon, right? I don't know. I'm ready. I can't believe it's coming up so soon. It's wild. Okay. I made a giant archway in front of my house. I'll have to take a video to share with you. It's really cool. It's covered in lights. It took me a month to do, and we have 2 weeks left. But anyway, all right, let's get into this. Let's talk about chapter 3 a little bit. 3 and 7, we'll talk about communication and love, right? That's our next 2 chapters. And a lot of relationship status, a lot of things related to relationships. Communication is super important. So we'll talk a little bit about gendered communication, communication in relationships, and some patterns of unsuccessful communication, a lot of stereotypes in this chapter, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So when we're communicating, we are conveying information to somebody. Right? Meaningful information, non-meaningful information. We're conveying something to another person when we communicate. And we can obviously communicate quite a bit verbally, right? I'm communicating to you now verbally, but we do an incredible amount non-verbally as well, especially when it comes to relationships and people that we're really well connected to. Just in general, communicating without words is something that is very, very strongly related to emotions, closeness, a lot of different things that we'll cover in this chapter. Body language can say volumes without saying anything at all. Right? If you ever had a couple walking toward you and you can tell that they're fighting, or a friend's coming up to you and you can tell they're in a bad mood, they haven't even opened their mouth yet, but you can tell so much from somebody's posture, from their body language, from the nonverbal stuff that they have going on. And body language, as I said, can fill in the gaps, right? People who have really strong communication patterns in their relationships tend to be successful. When you can talk to each other, navigate through conflict, those things tend to have a greater likelihood of making your relationship last. So a very kind of important thing for friendships, for relationships, and so on. And I found some kind of funny pictures when it comes to nonverbal communication, just kind of polar opposites. Again, you can tell so much from just looking at images, right? So happy couple, right? Touching each other, smiling, right? Versus back to back, right? Again, not saying anything, just looking at the pictures, there's a big difference between them, right? Arms crossed back to back, not looking at each other. Happy, not happy, right? Just so many, it's interesting, just the things that you can tell. And these are things that couples counselors and researchers look at. What are the nonverbal cues that you're maybe putting out there? I found so many more. I limited myself to 8, but right, in counseling, when you see couples, you look at stuff like this. How close do they sit to each other on the couch versus do they sit at polar opposite ends? She's closed off. He's got his legs kind of crossed. Same kind of stance over here, but they're touching each other and close. Right. So all these things can communicate quite a bit. Right? I love his expression. So eye rolling tends to be a very toxic communication pattern, non-verbally. Just again, we can say volumes without actually saying anything at all. A really big part of this chapter is looking at gendered communication. And there are two really, really popular books. These are kind of like the big books in the field of gender and communication patterns. They're really easy reads. I'll pass them around and take a look at it if you want. One is one you probably heard of, The Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And the other one is by this researcher, Deborah Tannen, who's a very like famous gender researcher as well. But both of these books and both of these people look a lot at what they call genderlect, right? How men and women tend to communicate. And men and women, stereotypically, now this isn't true of everybody, but stereotypically, men and women communicate very, very differently. And we'll talk about them. She yelled at me, right? Oh, look, it's a stereotype. She's defining stereotype for me. I don't know. All right. But very different patterns, right? And if you've ever been in a relationship with someone of the opposite sex, friendship or romantic wise, right, it might play out that you run into these patterns. Interesting, I tend to communicate much more in like a stereotypically male way, and my partner more like feminine way. So we run into a lot of the same like things that we'll talk about here. But these are patterns that are really well documented. And Deborah Tannen is one of the more famous researchers talking about it. She said that women tend to be focused more on something called rapport talk and men on report talk, right? Rapport is focused on relationships. Women worry more about relationships that they have, and men tend to worry more about reporting facts and details, right? Just like a fundamental difference between how men and women tend to communicate. Also talked about women using things like tag questions, disclaimers, and hedge words much more commonly than men. Right? Again, stereotypically, not always. A tag question is when you add a question out at the end of a sentence. Like, it's really warm in here, isn't it? Right? Like, it's almost like you're looking for validation that that's true. Very common for women to use those tag questions. Men, not so much. A disclaimer is something like, I may be wrong, but, right? Or I'm not sure, but like you say something like that before whatever's going to come next. And then hedge words, right? Little things like kind of, sort of, maybe, like it's kind of hot in here, maybe, right? Like you could add all of them together. But women are much more likely to use these things and have that uncertainty and lack of confidence. Men kind of being more report and like fact oriented and more confident. Women are more worried about community, right? Again, relationships, tending to avoid conflict, even if it's kind of pushing it and it's not on the surface. Men worried more about contest and status, right? Power dynamics, viewing conflict as a way to like negotiate and determine status. So these are some of the kind of famous things that she's known for. The other book, similar ideas, but a slightly different take. Dr. John Gray wrote a book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And he argued, like he used a metaphor that men and women are from different planets. Right, that they started on different planets. Men spotted women on a different planet one day with a telescope and wanted to go over there. So they journeyed to the other planet, all of this metaphorical, right? Journeyed to the other planet and then realized that they communicated differently, right? He almost said that we have to be aware of those differences because we're from different planets. And once we can acknowledge them, then we can live happily together, right? So kind of really deep into that metaphor. But he said that women oftentimes want to be listened to, and men like to offer advice. And I don't know if you've ever had this moment, right? Some of you just smiled and laughed as I said this, right? I have, but this can be a big one, right? Like I'm always such a problem solver. Like if my partner tells me an issue, I'm like, how can I fix it? It's like the first thing. It's a very like traditionally like male way of communicating. Not that that has to fit, but should just be like, I just want you to listen. Like, oh, okay, just tell me that next time. And I will just like, I'm sorry, I just wanted to solve a problem. Like I always want to fix everything. But this can be an issue sometimes that creates these problems when someone wants to be listened to and the other person's like, I'm just trying to fix it and offer advice. Very common male-female like clash. Men want to go to their caves and women want to talk. It's another very famous thing that he talks about. That men like to retreat and have solitude and privacy and space, go to their man cave, if you will. And women want to talk and work things out. That this can sometimes create problems in relationships. He also said that men are like rubber bands and women are more like waves, that men will pull away but they will only go so far before they snap back. Right? And that women tend to have like waves of emotion, right? Highs and lows much more commonly than men do. So all of these are stereotypes, but they can lead to issues in relationships, right? They could lead to communication problems with friends, with partners, with family, whoever, right? Very, very common. And so what I want you to do for a minute, I'm going to have you think about this just for a couple of minutes so we can talk about it more. I want you to find a few people around you and maybe jot this down so that you don't forget, because I'm hoping we can talk about it. But how do men tend to communicate stereotypically? Like, what do men tend to focus on? Maybe things like related to male communication stereotypically. And then how do women tend to communicate stereotypically? What do women tend to focus on? How do you talk to women, right? Related to female communication. And then you could even think about this and we'll talk about it together. Then how can that lead to some issues, right? Where are the problems? And I love this, right? You left the dishes in the living room, the garage is a mess. You never listen to my opinions, and half the time you don't even look at me when we talk. Translator, she says you didn't notice her haircut, right? It's a very common female like stereotype too, right? So I want you to find a few people, jot some thoughts down, and then we'll talk about it together. So just whatever's convenient, like 3 or 4 people around you, and go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah. Then, like maybe they're down to talk. Like, you know, talk about it then, but talk. I am.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually just been sadly. Yeah. Take another two and then we'll talk about it. Like And it's hard for it. Well, I don't know. Yeah. All right, let's talk about it together because I look forward to it. I heard some funny things like kind of floating around. I'd love to talk about it. Let's start with men. What are some things related to how men communicate or how you have to talk to men or anything related to male communication? And again, remember, these are stereotypes. And then may not be true about it. Yeah.
I definitely think that conversation with men, or like your male friend, are kind of less in depth. They don't, their durations are shorter.
Sure.
Usually when I hang out with my guys, it's kind of like we're just vibing together rather than maybe a more long-winded conversation.
Sure.
It's not much catch up. It's just kind of we're there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference, right? Very stereotypically male, right? You're just kind of together, right? Less conversation, right? Less catch up, right? Makes sense. Yeah.
I was agree. I was saying like when I hang out with my friends who are girls, like you're more like catch up, like tell me everything that's happened in your life since last time I saw you. And then when I'm hanging out with my friends who are guys, it's like not in a good one. Really saying
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like casual conversation. It's like
Rather than like tell me everything about every little thing that we've
Yeah.
done since I saw you last. It's very different focus, right? For sure. Yeah.
I just thought of that, if I'm talking with men, I tread more lightly if I'm talking about like politics or like,
Okay.
you know.
Interesting. Okay. Right. So certain topics, maybe you have to be a little more careful. Okay. Other people, other things related to male communication. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
like if like your body language, like if you're like mad and you're like, you know, like
Uh-huh.
they like don't get it. They're like, are you mad at me?
You're like, don't you see? Yeah. Uh-huh. No, and I think that's so true, right? Oftentimes not picking up on those little like nonverbal things, right? A little more oblivious. You almost have to like stereotypically hit men over the head with like whatever it is you want to say to them, because they might not pick up on those little things, right? Yeah.
Like, I communicate with like the more of like the take the hint of this is what I'm telling you.
Sure.
I don't want to tell you directly, but like take the hint. They never take the hint. Like, we'll just tell them.
Yeah. Right, and that's such a common one. Well, I hinted at it on the female side, right? And if you knew me well, you would know that I wanted X, right? Versus like, well, if that's what you wanted, just tell me, right? I think you said something, you just have to straight up tell them, right? Or like tell them how it is. Where was I? I went to Target and I was returning something and she's like, why are you returning it? I'm like, I bought the wrong thing. I don't know. I thought it was doing good. I went home, I bought the wrong thing. She's like, I send my husband with photos because otherwise he comes home with the wrong thing and I have to send them right back. Right, just that like, again, kind of oblivious, like you really have to be very straightforward most of the time, the very common stereotype. What else? Anything else that you came up with? About men, how do they, other things that they might not do so well or ways they might communicate? Yeah.
Stereotypes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's easy to get like talking over it,
Sure.
or just kind of like, you know. It's
Yeah.
and then it's happening, and you're sitting there, and you're like, obviously, at least in my mind, like, go away, leave me alone.
Mhm.
I guess that was happening. Type of things.
Almost like
It
talking
feels
at you instead of
so-
to you.
Yeah, and it feels so obvious to me, right, in the moment that it's like, you're like, how could this person not see that this is very one-sided?
Mhm. Okay, yeah, no, I can see that for sure, right now, when we explain that like talking over you or at you or
Yeah.
that's relatively common, very kind of almost too assertive in a sense, right? In some ways too, at times. Or-
Yeah,
or
it's
even-
like,
So, oh, I must help her out or explain.
Okay, yes, all right. Anyone else? Yeah, of course, these are all stereotypes, right? Yeah.
Stereotypical. I got raised a lot with the idea of like protect the fragile ego of whatever man you're talking to if you share the actual effective conversation.
Okay, yeah, no, I've heard that one a lot, right? That like you don't want to put them on the defense or damage their ego. Right, that's a very common one as well, that's the other person's responsibility. Anything else? Anything else you came up with? I have a like speaking without thinking. We're a very common stereotype that we just, I saw like 4 nods over here. That men tend to speak without thinking. We said short and to the point, kind of like oblivious. We said that as well. Very direct, assertive, confident, objective, sometimes insensitive, or just oblivious could be another word. Problem or solution oriented, tending to say more what they mean, being maybe even overly direct in some ways. Those are all kind of common things that I have written down for men. So I have a clip related to talking to men, and then I have one for women as well, though this one's a little longer than the other one. So I'll play it for you. Lots of great movies on male-female communication stuff. So this one is from The Ugly Truth. If you've ever watched that. Again, how to stereotypically talk to men. There's a little bit of swearing in it, just to warn you in case that's a thing for you, just to put that out there. But I'll play this for you. Such a good example, right, of how to talk, right, to men, right? All of these kind of stereotypes related to what men are looking for and how to talk to them, having to be 2 different people. Some of the things we talked about of, not wanting to bruise egos and things like that as well, right? Laughing at everything. I love that, be the saint and the sinner and the librarian and the stripper, right? Impossible scenarios, right? But again, a great example of kind of male how to talk to men or kind of male stereotypical stuff. Let's talk about the female side for a minute. So what are some of the things you came up with for how women tend to communicate, or maybe how to talk to women? What are some of the things, this is opportunity here on the other side to get even more balance it out here? And what can we come up with for women? Anyone want to share something we talked about? For women, how do you talk to women, or how do women tend to communicate? Want to raise their hand. Which is interesting in itself, right there, stereotypically, very, yeah.
Usually, it's kind of like, more like an in-depth conversation, usually no longer, I guess, more catch up.
Yeah.
Usually I can find it more pleasant conversation.
Sure.
Because there's more substance, or just just talk about,
Mhm.
go over. Usually most conversations I have with my female friends is usually like, I've learned something.
Okay.
It's literally something.
Okay.
I didn't have a pretty skewed, like, positive view of it. I don't know, yeah.
But kind of the opposite of the other, right? Rather than being more brief, more catching up, a little more in depth, right? Learning things, right, about them because it's more in depth. Other people, what else? What else can we say for women? Yeah,
It's more like passive.
Yeah.
Almost, 'cause it's like, do not say like exactly what they mean, it's kind of like
yeah.
the body language thing.
Uh-huh.
You can tell, like, it's sort of like, oh, I love your shoes, like, you can tell if it's passive aggressive.
Yeah,
No.
a lot of passive aggressive, indirect, like not exactly saying what you mean. What else could we add? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking that's interesting, like, I'll have conversations with my friends that I'm like completely not what we're talking about, but we were over talking about.
Okay, you're saying it without saying it.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Interesting, right? So you're getting kind of around it, right? To get at what you thought. Other stuff? I'll tell you one of my favorite ones, female, or you like female communication styles. Mine is the like anything that you want is fine, that statement, right? Like, where do you want to go to dinner tonight? This is what my partner and I get into all the time. Right? Where do you want to go to dinner? My partner will be like, anywhere's fine, you pick. Like, Cameron, right? Like, I know I'm screwed, right in that moment, I'm screwed, right? Like, I have a different word that comes to mind the second that's said. So I'll be like, okay, how about pizza? I'm not a fan of pizza. Okay, how about Don Cuco's, like Mexican food, does that sound good? So. Like, in my head, I'm going, anywhere was fine, huh? You pick, right? No, don't say that out loud, we'll fight. And so I'll suggest something else. That doesn't sound so great either. Well, what about this? Oh, that'll take too long. I'm just like, well, how about you give me 3 choices and I'll pick. They're like, no, you give me 3 choices. I'm like, I just gave you like 12 choices. And you said no to all of them. I'm like, what kind of food are you in the mood for? Well, pretty much anything. But not pizza, Mexican food, or this, or this, or this, or this, or this. I'm like, I'm out of options, like, and they're like, well, we'll just let the kids pick, right? Like, but every time I'm like, oh, I hate that question. That's the one between us. Every time I know I'm doing. The second she says, like, well, anything's fine, you pick. I'm like, I'll ask the kids. I'll let the kids pick and we'll end up at McDonald's, like, we should, because that's easier than the back and forth, right? Or the fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. Right? Fine is not a good one typically to women, right? Fine stands for insecure, neurotic, and emotional, right? And a therapeutic joke kind of thing sometimes is brought up, right? Not saying how you're feeling, not saying what you actually mean, very indirect communication. Those are very common. Anyone have anything else that came to mind? Is that listing those things? Anything else about how women can communicate? Yeah.
Perceived as nags.
Yeah, oftentimes read as nagging, right? It's very, very common. You're always on the case, you're always complaining. Anything else? Okay. Guys, this is your opportunity to get back for dogs. Right? Did you have a thought?
I think you just have to read a lot of subtext
Yeah.
and like be able to know when someone isn't actually fine and then actually like figure out how to address that without being,
Yeah.
well, you're very obviously not fine. So can
Right.
you just tell me how you're really dealing? Because that's just me.
And we just said, right, that men tend to often be oblivious, right? And so when women have the like, well, why aren't you picking up on all of this? Why didn't you know that? You know me well enough to know that I wasn't fine, right? Like, do they? You know, like again, it's that like back and forth, right? That issue that can come up. I have 2 friends, they're married, it's a man and a woman, they've been married a long time. And every year they have the same fight for Christmas. Every year. She's like, every year she'll be like, oh, I don't really want a whole lot, like for Christmas. Like, don't spend a lot, I don't want very much. So the friend, the guy, the husband, is like, well, you told me you didn't want very much, so I didn't get you anything. I got you very little, just like you said, right? And she's like, well, you know that I didn't really mean anything. Every year they have the same fight. We get like a phone call later that day of like, she's pissed at me, what I do wrong. Steven, dude, right? Every year we're like, what are the little things that she's been dropping hints on for the last like 3 months? That's what she wants you to get her for Christmas. When she says, I don't want anything, that's your chance to prove that you were like that you know her better, right? It's a very common like male-female like fight. I see them have this constantly. I'm always so grateful if my partner says, like her one like thing that's very like male. If she doesn't want something, that's what she says. Like, I don't want a present. And she means it, like no games, right? Oftentimes we get this kind of game element that can come up that way. Yeah.
I think one common archetype is that like people, or it's believed that like women already know how to be the girlfriend and the wife, but they have to like almost learn how to be the boyfriend and the husband.
Yeah.
Like it's, you never stop learning how to be a husband, but I feel like
Mhm.
it's stereotypically the women already know.
Okay.
They know it all.
I
You
like
gotta
that.
Keep learning.
Yeah, or keep teaching the man how to be
Right.
the husband, right? That's the other side of it sometimes, right? Anything else? Anything else that you thought of? I have a clip for how to talk to women, little bit shorter. It's from 40-Year-Old Virgin, but there's a little section in there about how to talk to women. I'll play that for you. Oops. But just a very different like perspective, right? So lots of movies highlighting these stereotypes. Again, they're not always true, right? Some people are very much the opposite. Some people do both, right? I tend to blend both of them a lot, depending on the day, the conversation, the person, right? So it's not as simple as like men do this and women do this, but we do have a lot of documentation on these stereotypes. And again, they can cause a lot of issues in relationships when you have that like kind of butting heads. And typically people learn to work through these things, right? They learn like, oh, when you say X, that means Y, right? Or, you know, you kind of pick up on those cues the longer you have been with someone. Or hopefully you have friends, like I keep trying to coach my buddy, right? Dude, start writing down now. I actually talked to him like 3 days ago. Was like, start keeping track for Christmas. Are you keeping track for Christmas? And he's like, yeah, I have 2 ideas this year. I'm like, see, I'm saving their marriage and they don't even know it, right? But very, very common stuff. One other thing here, a little bit more about kind of how we communicate in relationships. There's something called the onion theory of communication, that when we first meet people, we tend to be very much on the surface, like the outer layer of the onion, right? And that's appropriate, right? When you're first getting to know someone, you start with the more superficial, and the more you get to know them, the deeper in you go, right? We increase our intimacy in layers. If you start off with too much too fast, right, you oftentimes will scare people away. Don't give people enough and you don't progress, again, you might kind of turn them off or scare them away. So it tends to be kind of a progression of starting with stuff that's more on the surface and then increasing that depth in layers as you get to know somebody more. I always think of, I think it's Baby Mama, the movie. There's a scene where she's on a first date with somebody and she's telling him like all the life goals and that she wants to have children and blah, 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 and he gets up and runs out, right? Like on a first date, because too much, too fast. Right, and that's kind of the idea behind this here. Also really important in relationships, something that a lot of people hate to do, but it's important to discuss things like your sexual history and sexual preferences. Oftentimes people hate to have these conversations, right? They don't want to hear about past partners. They don't want to hear about like things beyond them. But if you don't ever have these conversations about what people like or don't like, then you're kind of assuming what they like and don't like, and that can lead to problems as well, right? Maybe you're going off of past experience or past partners, right? Important to have those communications, have empathy for each other, right? Learn to say no, to make requests, avoid sending mixed signals. Important to do self-disclosure, right? Again, in layers, kind of revealing more and more and more the closer that you get to each other. But I have a great example of the idea of like sexual histories and preferences. And again, when you don't have these conversations, it can lead to struggles in a relationship. If you've seen the movie I Love You, Man, which is another great like comedy along these same lines, there's a whole scene where they have a conversation about like oral sex. They've never had it as a couple. They're about to get married. And it's been causing them relationship issues for some time, right? And it kind of comes out awkwardly at a party. So I have that to share with you. Play that. Kind of highlighting that importance of communicating. Awkward as those conversations can be, they're really important for like that happiness in a relationship, right? If you don't tell a partner what you like and don't like, you're kind of setting them up for failure along with yourself, right? And so as awkward as it is, I think his facial expression when she says like he literally shuddered whenever I touched him or something like that, and he like grimaces, that's how most people tend to feel about this idea, right? I think that sums up this idea really well. But it can be really important and lead to a lot, better intimacy between partners. Last thing in this chapter, some unsuccessful communication patterns. I love this picture on the bottom. It looks like she's like going to eat him or something. I don't know. But there's a very famous couple psychologist. It's actually a couple that works together. It's Gottman and Gottman. It's John Gottman and his wife. And they're really well known for working with couples and being able to predict with very high degree of success when a couple's relationship will last or not last. And the way that they've been able to do that is by looking for what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? A metaphor, right, talking about like the end of the world or the bringing of like the end of times. And so what they look for are these 4 horsemen. And they said, if you see these 4 horsemen and they're not addressed and not fixed, that they oftentimes signal the beginning of the end of a relationship. So now if you have some of these in your relationship, don't think that it means the end, but they might be things that you need to work on in order to avoid that. So criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, right? And so these are 4 things that tend to be very unsuccessful, problematic patterns. Criticism is when you attack your partner's like personality or character. It tends to have a lot of generalizations. You always do this. You never do that, right? Rather than like, hey, today you didn't do X. It's like, you never do X, right? And so really attacking their character rather than maybe the isolated event that's currently happening. Contempt is when you attack their like sense of self. You insult them or intend to do harm, right? So it might be rolling your eyes. That one tends to be relatively problematic. Like sneering, like body language that's really like aggressive or negative, right? You have like an intent to harm or insult a partner. Defensiveness, always seeing yourself as the victim, right? Your partner shares something with you and you're like, well, my side of it is, and like always like putting it back on you rather than listening to them and seeing their side. Kind of always being the victim means you're not really hearing the other person. Maybe you're not validating what they're saying. And then stonewalling, people who withdraw from the relationship as a way to avoid conflict. They put up a wall. We always call it the Elsa wall, right? It's like a frozen ice wall, like between you and the other person, where you like refuse to talk to them. Maybe you shut them out in some way. You retreat or kind of wall them out and withdrawal. That tends to be problematic as well because people don't have an opportunity to be heard, right? So when people have these patterns, it tends to be problematic, right? They tend to run into issues in their relationships. And these need to be addressed or fixed through things like therapy or just like working on them, right? You can go along with just working on them. Otherwise, it might lead to the end of a relationship. Any other thoughts or comments or questions or anything else related to this chapter? We're going out to dinner tonight. I wonder if I'm going to run into that tonight, right? Like our kids have like an appointment and then we have practice. So I know we're going out to dinner, but it has to be fast. So the options are limited. So I have a higher chance for success. Right. We'll see. Wish me luck. Wish me luck. All right. You know what's so funny is I just had the thought, I'm like, I'm recording these. What if she watched that and heard me complaining? Like, not that that would ever happen, but that's funny. Just a little insight there. I was like, oh, I just got nervous that it might come back to bite me. All right. It won't, but all right. I convinced myself. Hopefully it won't. All right. Next chapter, very directly related. Chapter 7, love and intimacy. And we'll just get a tiny bit into this and then we'll be done for the day. Chapter 3, kind of brief, but we're building on those patterns and those ideas of communication. Talk a little bit about different types of love. And I have a couple of have a little love inventory that we'll take probably next class, which I think is kind of fun to do. What are the chemicals involved in love? There's a lot of biology involved when we're falling in love with somebody. Issues in relationships and so on. All right. Some pictures here of happy, loving couples. I have a little love movie montage to get you in the loving spirit. We just talked about unsuccessful communication. So now let's get like sappy and romantic, right? So here, I'll play this for you. It's just a compilation I found online. After that, I'm like, ooh, I want to watch Star Wars now. But getting in that spirit, right, of falling in love. A lot of movies related to relationships and falling in love with people, like a variety of images up here. But love is something that is incredibly difficult to define, right? And so how do we define, what is love? And the second I hear that, right?
What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me.
Don't hurt me no more. Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more.
Depth and complexity of love, lots of different types of love, which we'll talk about over the next few slides. Different things to different people, very difficult to measure, right? This is something that tends to evolve and change over time. The beginnings of relationships tend to look very different than, 5, 10, 20 years into a relationship. And that's relatively normal and relationships evolve in that way. So it can be a very complicated thing to define. And if I were to have you all list things that you associated with love, it might be very different for each one of you, which can sometimes make it a little bit complicated as well. So lots of different types. Let's talk about just a couple of types of love. One very common distinction is romantic or passionate love versus companionate or conjugal love. Now, when you first meet somebody and you're developing like that chemistry in a relationship, we're in what is called romantic or passionate love. Sometimes we call this infatuation. The whole idea of love at first sight, it's probably more lust at first sight, in the sense that you have a lot of these like chemicals that course through your system. You're infatuated with this other person. Romantic or passionate love tends to be very short-lived. And we'll talk about why that is next time when we talk about the chemicals involved in love. But oftentimes the beginning of the relationship is so powerful and so strong and so like obsessive in a way, because of those physical elements that are going on in your system. And they can't last, right? Your body can't hold on to that. So this tends to be like a 3 to 7 month period of time, which is why a lot of couples break up in the like 3 to 7 month range of time, right? They start to have these feelings wear off and they either transition here or they fall apart, right? It's very, very common to see couples break up at the like 3 to 7 month mark. So a lot of sexual desire. You might not even know this person yet. I'm so in love with them, but you haven't had a fight. You don't know nothing about them yet, right? Like you might not even know them very well in the slightest, right? But that's very common in the beginning to have those feelings of like they complete me, they're everything I've ever wanted. Then you have your first fight, forget it, we're done, right? That's very common in early relationships. And in order for this relationship to last, it has to turn more into like companionate or conjugal love. You have to then hit a point where you accept and maybe tolerate their shortcomings, right? You love them for who they are. You've had those conflicts. You have that deep attachment and affectionate like interactions toward this person, emotional and physical intimacy. You still obviously want to have those moments of passion and romance, but in order for a relationship to last, it has to go from one to the other. And you have to oftentimes find ways to bring that passion and romance back, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we get to the chemicals and ways that you can kind of do that. It's a good time of year for it too, with Halloween. But 2 different types here. Another very common theory talks about 3 types, right? And I'll give you a heads up. This would all be a great like matching question on the next exam, like match the type of love to a short description, because there's a few different types we're covering here. Sternberg, another kind of theorist here, talking about 3 different love components: passion, intimacy, and commitment, right? That when you meet somebody, you have a lot of passion, but you might not have a lot of intimacy or commitment yet, right? And that you have to have all 3 of these things to get to consummate love, which is the middle: intimacy, passion, and commitment together. So kind of looking at these different dynamics that you can have, where people have different types of love depending on these 3 different love components. So if you are infatuated with someone and that's it, it's just passion, right? Fatuous love is passion and commitment. Empty love, maybe people have been together a long time, they're just staying together because they feel like they have to, or maybe it's for their children, or maybe because they just have been together. We call that empty love. Or romantic love, intimacy and passion. Liking someone might be intimacy alone. So how you can get all these different components of the triangle depending on what components you feel for a person. So we're starting to get a little beyond just the distinction of 2 types, and here that you can have different types, right? So maybe you just have intimacy, which might be, we're talking about emotional intimacy here, right? That could be with a friend, right? Or someone in your family. Could be more like an empty love, a commitment love, right? It might depend on the person and how well you know them and the type of relationship that you have. So 3 different types here, and again, in the middle would be the ideal. Consummate love, all-consuming love, would be intimacy, passion, and commitment together. Right? So those 3 things working together is the ideal. One other one here, the colors of love. Theorist John Allen Lee talked about 6 basic ways that we can love someone. He called these the colors of love. And so I have a love quiz for you, but it'll take us more than like 4 or 5 minutes to do. So maybe what we'll do is we'll stop here and we'll start with this next time so we can do the love quiz. Just a quick reminder, I mentioned this to you at the beginning, but in case you came in late, I did assign that movie worksheet, right? So go on to Canvas under announcements. If you haven't finished the movie and the worksheet, make sure you do that before Wednesday. What we'll do is we'll finish up this chapter and then we'll talk about the movie and the questions on there. It's a great way to pull it all together, and then I'll collect it for you. Just make sure you wrap that up. Make sure you watch the lecture video on 8 and 9 that I put on there as well. It's relatively brief, but just make sure you close all that up and bring it with you on Wednesday so we can talk about it, and then I will collect it from you. Right? So have a wonderful rest of the day. I'll see you all on a Wednesday.